Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. I am Vince Tiderio. That guy over there, that's Jesse Stiers. No Sean Stiers tonight, because if everybody will check their calendars, they will notice that in T-minus 58 minutes, the Notre Dame women's basketball team will be tipping off. So Sean Stiers is busy. He's over at Purcell Pavilion. That's a home game. And then tomorrow, he will be traveling to Storrs, Connecticut with the women's basketball team because they play UConn on Saturday night. So we will not have a show tomorrow. So this is it. IB Nation Sports Talk. We're doing a little Thursday rapid fire with my main man, Jesse. Jesse Stiers, how you doing today, sir?
I am doing well, Vince. Today was an easy day at work. I got to head out a little bit early, so that meant I was just dropping off a lot of like hard copies to one of the kind of local engineering offices. And that means I get to leave early because I got to make it there before they close. And they usually close before we close. But the downside of it is I was in such not a hurry, but I was so excited to leave work early that I left a couple key components in the office. So not too happy about that.
You left your Stanley at the office? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I left my Stanley at the office. No, I left my like USBs that plug in my mouse and my keyboard into my laptop. And so while it doesn't seem vital for what I do, it's nice to have this keyboard that can work. But now it doesn't work. And so
now it's just a big old brick.
Yeah, and I'm not going into the office on a Friday. You better believe that. And so
look at you getting all tomorrow off.
No, I just I work from home on Mondays and Fridays. And so tomorrow the efficiency is going to be at an all-time low. One, it's my mouse or my keyboard's not going to be functioning how it's supposed to. So
yeah, you just need to put that someplace else because you're getting a little fidgety with your keyboard over there, pal. Jeez.
But other than that, I'm doing great. I'm excited for this show because I think we're going to touch on a wide range.
Yes, we are.
Of sports topics, and this is IB Nation Sports Talk. So
if
everyone is here thinking this is just a strictly Notre Dame show today, you are sadly mistaken. We are going to get through a lot of fun topics.
We are, and we only had like 6 or 7 topics to begin with, and it has ballooned to like 13 because it's just rapid fire today, and we're just gonna go right down the list. So without further ado, let's just kick this thing off. Right here with some Notre Dame questions because it is a Notre Dame centered show. So, of course, we're going to talk some Notre Dame. So I'm going to throw it right up to you. Notre Dame is adding a 30-year-old walk-on kicker named Eric Goins. Excuse me. He graduated from Citadel with 1 year of eligibility remaining and then went straight into the Army. So his eligibility stayed intact. He is now at Notre Dame getting his master's degree and figured, why not walk on to the football team? So buy or sell a 30-something on the Notre Dame football team, Jesse.
Yeah, I buy this, Vince, just strictly because, it kind of feels like the Brandon Aubrey situation, right? You got this guy. He is coming back after being away from kicking for a while.
Yeah, his last season was 2015.
Right. And so, this is a 10-year gap, right? And so you have it. There's no such thing as too much depth, I think. And especially when you start talking about kickers, I don't think it's a bad thing to have a potential, second option just in case things go wrong. And so it sounds like the talent is there, AKA Brandon Aubrey, but we just haven't seen him kick in, X amount of years. So I think I definitely buy this, and it's kind of funny because this is the route that my dad took coming out of high school as well. Granted, he wasn't, able to play in college as a kicker, but he served in the Army, and then when he was done, he went to the University of Kansas, right? So he was 4 years old. He's 4 years older than my mom for that reason, because when he was a freshman and she was a freshman, there's a 4 year age gap. So I just think it's kind of cool that this guy is going to be given an opportunity and gets to get a master's from Notre Dame, and 2, be like, you know what? In my free time, I'm just going to go try to kick for the football team. So I love it. And again, I think it's with kind of the revolving door that's been at the kicking position the last few seasons. I think it's great to have options.
I don't know if there's been a revolving door at kicker. I don't know if that's actually accurate.
I meant like the it just feels like every year it's a new kicker the last few years.
But that's by design. They want it that way.
Right.
Yeah, they have a very regimented way that they're going. Like, they're always going to get a transfer portal kicker who has established themselves elsewhere. And I guess, frankly, this Eric Goins kid is kind of like a transfer portal kicker who has established himself elsewhere, because he was a starter at the Citadel, had some big kicks. I mean, his percentage isn't amazing, but he had, he won a playoff game, I believe. He did some pretty good things down there at the Citadel, and then went into the Army for 7 years. So I love it from like a leadership standpoint. Obviously all these guys are going to look up to him. They now have 4 kickers on the roster. They have 4 kickers on the roster, 3 of which are walk-ons, obviously. And so it's always good to have options. It's always good to have, guys that aren't going to be phased. And I would say that he would qualify as somebody who's probably not going to be phased by the moment of being a kicker. So I think this is pretty cool, frankly.
So you're telling me
if
you can stand in the battlegrounds that you should be able to kick, some field goals here and there, that the pressure isn't quite the same?
I would say that they would be much different. Yeah. And I don't know all about his history, but I believe he did a couple tours, overseas and did his thing. And, but yeah, I think kicking, I don't know. There's a lot of pressure kicking for Notre Dame, though, if he ever actually gets that opportunity. I don't think that there's going to be like a kicker competition or anything like that. Like, Mitch Jeter is an outstanding kicker. I mean, it's an outstanding kicker. He's not going to get unseated by this kid. But, and I say kid because he's 30 and I'm 43, so he's still a kid to me. Okay. But he's not going to get, he's going to be a depth piece. He's going to be a depth piece at kicker. Maybe he gets to kick off maybe every now and again or something like that. But he's a depth piece. He's not going to be the starting kicker.
Yeah, I like what you said there about the leadership thing. Just a guy that obviously comes with a much different perspective on life, has been through obviously different experiences. And I think that some of that humility at times for that locker room might be something. I'm not going to sit up here and act like it's going to be the biggest deal and that this guy is going to be the leader of the locker room, but still a guy of that, maturity. And again, the humility that he can provide to certain situations, be like, listen, guys, like, it's not the end of the world type situation. So just kind of excited to see where this kind of storyline goes.
Sure. And like Jason Smith, it's a good story for game day. Yes, absolutely. And somebody said that.
Yeah. What's the over under that this comes up on game day? When
my gosh.
When game day's in
the answer
for whatever yes. Notre Dame game.
The answer is yes. I mean, it's going to happen. There's no doubt about it. Right. And yes, I understand the definition of a revolving door is a different kicker every year, but the way it was described, revolving door makes it sound like they've got issues. Like they got to bring in a new guy it's not, this is what they want to do. I mean, this is it's by design. So this is what Notre Dame wants to do. They're not bringing in freshman kickers anymore. It's just not a thing. And they'll flat out tell you as much. It's like, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not wasting a scholarship on a freshman that we have to develop. So, they're just not doing it. But it's still a cool story. Policy. It's still a cool story. So, all right. There we go. I got too many tabs open. That's the problem. I'm not used to all this pressure. All right, next question. After Notre Dame's 12-point loss to Miami last night, head coach Micah Shrewsberry only played 6 kids in the second half. He was asked if he gave any thought to putting some of the other guys back in the game, and his response was, quote, "Zero thought." This response is blank to you.
This response is perfect to me because, again, after the Citadel game, Micah Shrewsberry made it very clear that it doesn't matter if you're the most talented guy on the team, the least talented guy on the team. He is going to play the guys who are going to play the right way, play with the right intensity, play, with the right passion for the game. And these guys were able to come out in the second half and play the way that Micah Shrewsberry wanted. And Vince, I was scrolling through some Notre Dame basketball stuff in some free time today.
Look at you. And
I know, right? It was a crazy day. Notre Dame is 314th in adjusted offensive efficiency. That's bad. That's like one of the worst offensive teams in basketball, right? But they are 46th in adjusted defensive efficiency. So 314 in offense, 46 in defense. That gap is the biggest gap in college football. It's college basketball. You have essentially one of the worst offenses and one of the top tier defenses. And that defense right now is what is keeping Micah Shrewsberry and their teams in these games. It gives them an opportunity to win. Even when they're losing, they're not doing well offensively. They're not even averaging a point per trip down the court. Every possession, they are not averaging a point per trip. That's really bad. And so if these guys don't want to buy into what Micah Shrewsberry is saying that they need to do in terms of effort and defense, then the hell with them, because that is what is keeping them in these games, Vince. And so if we all know their offense isn't going to be better this season. What they can control is their defense. And if those guys don't want to play defense, again, there's no room for you on the court if that's the case, because the defense is quite literally what is keeping them in all of these games and allowing them to win some of these games that they probably shouldn't win. So I love this. I love it. And I can't say enough about what Micah Shrewsberry is doing in terms of establishing the culture that he wants amongst this Notre Dame men's basketball team. And I'm quite honestly jealous, because as a Cowboys fan, this is what they need. There's no toughness culture on that Cowboys team. There's nothing. Everything is earned on this Notre Dame men's basketball team, and I just love to see that.
And it's going to pay off, right? I mean, it's going to pay off in the future. You know, these guys aren't good offensively. They're not. I mean, you just had all the stats, and you're absolutely correct. And, you know, Marcus Burton is leading all freshmen in the ACC in score, and I think he's one of the top 4 or 5 freshmen in the country. But that's because he has to be. Like, he doesn't really have a choice.
Right.
And when he's off, the team's just not going to score. And he was a little off last night. You know, I can't remember exactly what he ended. He ended with 15 points, which is right about his average, a little low. But there were some key moments where he missed some shots or whatever. He's a freshman. It's not going to happen all the time. But his defense was excellent. The team's defense was excellent. They just ran out of gas at the end of the game. Excuse me. They ran out of gas. And the fact that Micah Shrewsberry is sticking to his guns, I love it. I absolutely love it, because he is building a culture. He's not going to take shortcuts just to win the game, because that game was winnable.
He's invested in the long term.
Absolutely. And he's got enough support from the administration to be allowed to do that as well. I think that means a lot too. You know, they're not saying, well, you need to go out and win, you know, X amount of games in order to be successful or whatever. That's not the case, because this was a winnable game last night, and he stuck by his guns, and they ended up losing the game because they were tired. I mean, 6 guys tired. You're going to get dead leg. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. And so he stuck to his guns. He is making it very clear that butt will meet bench if you're not doing it right. And I love that. It's going to pay off for him in dividends in the future. It's going to pay off huge for him in the future. And this team is fun to watch because of it, frankly. And I just think that Micah Shrewsberry continues to prove that he was the right guy for the job.
100%.
I mean, you know what I mean? He continues to prove it day in and day out. I know plenty of coaches that will compromise their soul for a W. You know, they'll play a kid who doesn't deserve it. You know, they'll allow a kid to break rules, you know, whatever. But as long as they win the game, that's all that matters. Micah Shrewsberry is not that guy, man. And I dig that about him. I really do. I really dig that about him.
It's admirable.
Absolutely. And it makes him and this program easy to root for. And
even when they're not doing well.
Right. And there were times with the last program where it was not easy to root for that group. And I didn't, because I didn't like the way they did things behind closed doors.
Right.
So this is a refreshing coach to root for me. So I'm enjoying it. I really am. All right. Number 3. Saturday night, Notre Dame women traveled to Storrs, Connecticut to play UConn. Amongst Notre Dame athletics, where does this rivalry rank for you? Notre Dame, UConn, women's basketball.
Yeah, so this rivalry ranks up there for me, Vince, because, you know, growing up as a kid, we moved to South Bend right after Notre Dame won their first national
Yeah, like
championship
right
against
after.
Purdue.
Yeah.
And so we moved. I remember sitting in that, watching that game on the TV with my mom, sitting in Colorado as a youngin, because my dad moved to Indiana before us. And then we were doing, taking care of everything in Colorado. And then we were going to, meet with him, obviously, in South Bend. And when we came to South Bend, he was, obviously continuously doing the Notre Dame women's basketball games. And so that meant that we, as a family, also would go to those women's basketball games. And every year, Notre Dame played UConn, and they played them twice a year because this is when they were both in the Big East. And most of the times, they were going to play 3 times a year because they were going to meet in the Big East championship.
Right.
And so this rivalry grew for me early on because we went to a lot of games and, a lot of seasons, and every season you're playing UConn 3 times. And those were the 2 top programs in the country. Those games always meant something, right? Like you had a good idea of where both programs stood after they played each other, right? Like it was Notre Dame going to live up to UConn, was UConn maybe having a down year, etc. And so this rivalry, I put it up there. It rivals, Notre Dame, Michigan in terms of football for me. It rivals Notre Dame and St. John's when they used to play each other a lot in baseball, and both teams were good. It rivals Notre Dame and USC in terms of football. It rivals. I think that's like it up there. Like it's got to be in my top 5, if not my top 3. And I'm not putting those in any specific order, but it's up there. And it means a lot. And I think a new era has kind of started after UConn has, left the Big East, and now Notre Dame is part of the ACC. They don't get to see each other as much. And now Muffet is gone. It used to be like the Geno and Muffet kind of feud. And so it's maybe taken a step down as of recent. But again, when I was growing up, it was the game 3 times a year. And now it still carries the same weight, even though they don't get to play each other as much.
Wasn't Louisville Notre Dame baseball a big one? Wasn't it like a hated rivalry? It's probably more of a question for your dad, but I thought that one was a big one.
That one in St. John's, because the St. John's coach and Paul Maneri did not get basically, if Paul didn't get along with another coach, that
fair
was
enough.
But Paul didn't get along with people for no reason. It was usually because of something specific.
Fair enough. No, that's fair enough. And I don't know the other sports at Notre Dame well enough to know like what their big rivalries are. So
right.
It's Marquette Notre Dame basketball, I know, is a big one, things like that. But I don't, people say UCLA Notre Dame. That's not a rivalry. It just so happened Notre Dame snapped their streak 50 years ago. Like I wouldn't call that a rivalry. I would just call that we get to talk about Digger every time they play. Like that's all that one is. But you'd have your football rivalries, right? Notre Dame, USC, Notre Dame, Michigan, Notre Dame, Navy, that kind of a thing. And so, maybe like Notre Dame, Duke in lacrosse. Joe just brought that one up. I thought that was a good one. Notre Dame, Virginia, Notre Dame, Duke in lacrosse. Okay, Father David. Those are all big ones. Obviously, we were introduced to the Notre Dame Duke rivalry as a nation because of last year and the run that they made and all of that. So, but no, Notre Dame women basketball and UConn is top 3 for me, no matter what sport you're talking about in Notre Dame. And it was the best of the best, 2 of the best all-time coaches going at each other. Now it's like elder abuse if Notre Dame goes in there and beats Geno, because I think it's probably time for him to step down. But I obviously I'll be rooting for Notre Dame going in there, hostile environment. The one thing UConn does do a very, very good job of, though, is they pack that house, man. Especially when Notre Dame comes to town. So that should be a really cool, very cool environment and a very cool atmosphere to call a game. So a little jealous of our boy Sean Stiers, who actually is in this next question, Jesse.
I was going to say it rolls nicely into this next one.
See how we did that? It was just a nice little segue. So Gus Johnson, Mr. Maserati Marv himself, will be calling the Notre Dame UConn game. Excuse me, on Fox. When's the last time you heard Gus Johnson call a women's basketball game, and does it heighten the game for you? Finally, are you more likely to listen to Gus or the great Sean Stiers on the call?
This is a loaded question, a three-parter.
It is a loaded question.
So Gus Johnson, I can't recall the last time he's done a women's basketball game. And, that is partially just because I don't really follow enough women's basketball outside of Notre Dame women's basketball.
Sure.
So I can't really tell you, what, but it feels like a big deal if Gus Johnson is showing up to a women's basketball game and they're putting it in prime time on Fox on a Saturday, right? And so I think it's a pretty big deal when you can get him in the arena. And so I do think for that reason, it does add, to the hype of the game. I think it is very clear that the networks want to bring as much attention to this rivalry matchup between two of the, you could argue that UConn, Tennessee, Notre Dame, and like South Carolina are the top 4 teams in women's basketball over the last 2 decades, right? And so when you have 2 of them in the same gym, you add Gus Johnson, it's going to be on Fox. I think it adds tremendous value to this game. It brings it more to the national spotlight. And then kind of the final part of this question, am I more likely to listen to Gus or my dad? I got to go with Pops. I'll turn the game on TV. I'll be able to watch it. I'll sync it up with the radio call, and I'll just mute it. And so I get the best of both worlds when I can do it that way. I think that in terms of, I have more interest in listening to the guy that's been there every game compared to Gus Johnson, who's reading the cliff notes and stepping in to probably do his first game of the season. So that's nothing against Gus. He's great at what he does. I just want the guy that's been around for every game.
Well, and I guess he does some select Big Ten games and things like that. I was just kind of Googling Gus Johnson and women's basketball, and he's got some Caitlin Clark, quotes out there and things like that. No surprise, he's sensationalized those quotes as well. But I mean, it's a no-brainer. Of course, you're going to go with Sean Stiers. He actually knows the team. He knows what to expect. That's the kind of inside info that you want when you're listening to a game. So, of course, you're going to go with Sean Stiers. And I still say, and I will back up my point here, that Notre Dame doesn't use Sean Stiers' audio enough or ever over the highlights for Notre Dame women's basketball. What are they thinking? Some of these people that they have doing games on the TV side of things are terrible. They're terrible. And yet they're the ones with the audio on Notre Dame's highlights. It just makes no sense to me. Makes no sense. So that's the limb I'm willing to die on. And I'm going to start. I've done it a couple of times, but I'm going to start just commenting on every single little post. I'm going to become.
Hey, Sean Stiers would give a better call than this.
I'm just saying. I'm putting it out there from now on. So, and I never see. I can't wait. What I want to see. They show like videos of them like boarding the plane and stuff like this. I want to see Sean Stiers getting up on the charter plane, walking behind the team. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to see. I never get to see any clips of the Stiers, man.
You want to see him carrying his Louis Vuitton luggage on the plane?
That's right.
His
bringing Louis.
His little sub to go as he's getting on the plane.
That's right. He's bringing his Louis and he's getting on the plane, traveling in style. So that's what I want to see. All right. I'll even stop knocking him for not using his calls if I get to see him board
that plane.
Yeah, that's what I want to see. So, all right. Let's spread our wings here a little bit, Jesse. Let's talk a little NFL. All right. So with 2 jobs now still open in the NFL, we got Commanders and Seahawks. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what are the chances that the future Hall of Famer Bill Belichick is unemployed for the 24 season?
Yeah, so 1 being, I think, absolutely unemployed, and 2, he's going to be, employed and basically hired tomorrow. I got to put this around a 2 or a 3, Vince. I think if the Raheem Morris news didn't break right before the show, who the Falcons just hired as their head coach, I would have probably been at a 5 or a 6. I think that was his best potential landing spot, to be honest with you. I don't think he's in for kind of the roster rebuild that the Commanders need. And I think the Seahawks roster is in better shape, but they still have a lot of question marks. They don't really have like Geno Smith. I don't think he's a lock at your quarterback.
Right. Is he your franchise guy that you want to build around?
Right. I think they have a solid core of wide receivers. And then defensively, they're just not quite the same as they used to be. And I honestly think Dan Quinn is ultimately going to become the Seahawks head coach. He was their defensive coordinator during the Legion of Boom, under Pete Carroll when they won a Super Bowl and went to another Super Bowl. That was under Dan Quinn's defense. I think he fits Seattle. He's been to Seattle. Ownership knows Dan Quinn. I think that's where he's ultimately going to land. And so, again, I thought that Atlanta position was his best shot. And after Raheem Morris got hired, I got to put this about a 2 or a 3. I think he's going to be unemployed going into next season.
Right. I think he's going to be unemployed as a coach. I should have been more specific, but I think that's where you were going with that anyway.
Correct.
He hasn't been interviewed by either team, to my knowledge. And he had 2 interviews with the Falcons, and they said, yeah, we're good. Which is kind of surprising. I mean, really, Raheem Morris apparently is a better catch than Bill
I was
Belichick.
really surprised by the Raheem Morris hire, to be honest with you, Vince, because Raheem Morris was a defensive coordinator, and the Falcons' struggles come offensively. They have all these pieces, right. Kyle Pitts, Desmond Ridder, Bijan Robinson. I think maybe, I can't remember if Calvin Ridley was still there. I think he got traded. But still, you're bringing in a defensive guy to figure out their offensive struggles. I don't know. That personally, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he may be employed. He'll sit behind a desk or whatever, collect somewhat of a paycheck, but I think his chances of being coach, I'm putting it at 1, the lowest you could possibly put it. Unless something changes in the next couple of days, Adam Schefter says that they're not going to hire anybody till next week after the championship games. But, okay, I still don't know that plays in favor of Bill Belichick, right? So that's not looking good for him. So, and he obviously still wants to coach. Otherwise, he wouldn't have interviewed twice in Atlanta.
Right.
Places, So it's just very interesting that all of these jobs are passing on Bill Belichick, of all people. It proves he's an acquired taste. Let's just put it that way.
The thing that I think the thing that is ultimately shooting himself in the foot is, he clearly went into these interviews with the language of, I kind of want 50% of the foundation to be there, right? Like, I don't want to have to rebuild it myself. And I just don't know how appealing that is to an NFL team to be like, yes, we are going to put all of our chips behind you. All of our players are going to buy in. I just feel like that's not the right rhetoric going into some of these positions of, I'll work hard, but I kind of want, half of the foundation or the structure to kind of already be in place. So I feel like that's coming back to hurt him, honestly.
It's going to be, it's Bill's way or the highway, and there's not a lot of GMs and owners that want to give up that kind of control either. So, we'll see what happens. He's also in his 70s, so, that's part of it too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sticking with the NFL, the Bengals needing to replace their offensive coordinator now that he's the head coach of the Titans, I do believe, earlier this week. That means every single team in the NFL has changed their offensive coordinator since the 22 offseason, and that's blank to you.
That's insane to me, Vince, because it just shows the constant changing landscape in the sport of football. And it's not only the NFL. I think it's heightened in the NFL, but it's also, you see it at the college level. And I honestly didn't believe it when I read that, I didn't believe that was true. Like, I was like, really? And so then I started Googling, and I was like halfway through, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll take their word for it at this point, because no one, after going halfway through, I haven't been proven wrong yet. But it's just insane to me. And I think it's also just shows the constant evolution of football, especially on the offensive side of the ball. There's always some new innovative way to get guys open in space, to, move your offense around, to show one thing, to do another. And I just feel like it's a copycat league. And once you get found out, it's hard to kind of come back from, because once the answers are there, it spreads like wildfire. Everyone's going to be using that same template of how to slow down your offense. And so I guess I don't feel as bad that, Notre Dame, the Cowboys, they've also gone through a lot of offensive, not gone through, but have had, a multitude of different offensive coordinators over the past few seasons. And it's just not a localized problem. It's kind of a more global problem, I guess.
Well, and I think that's it. It's the what have you done for me lately kind of a situation, right?
Correct.
It's instant gratification from these owners and these GMs. And it's like, if you don't have the instant gratification, then they're going to move on from you. Or if you do have that instant gratification, you're going to get a head coaching job. And you're just not going to stick around as an offensive coordinator anywhere. So I don't know. That's kind of more what it says to me. It's like these GMs and these owners, they want it right now, and they want the results yesterday. Like, that's what they want. And if they don't get it, they're going to move on to somebody else. And there's so many guys getting opportunities now as offensive coordinators. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then you've got these guys now getting these opportunities as head coaches. They just look like babies. They're just so young.
And I think that's the other thing that this is showing too, is that the youth in the NFL, because it feels like all of these OCs are being replaced by someone younger in the new innovative way and the new wave of offense and everything like that. I feel like the median age for offensive coordinators, head coaching is rapidly declining. And like you said, it's the instant gratification that these GMs and owners want the new bright and shiny thing, with all the bells and whistles and these explosive, fast-paced offenses, etc. And I think that's why you're honestly seeing this.
Yes, absolutely. Everything's got to be right now. Otherwise, it's just not good enough, And the right now guys are getting the head coaching jobs too. I mean, the kid from Tampa Bay was an offensive coordinator for one season, and now he's a head coach.
Yeah.
Mind blown. How does that, these guys don't even have to put their time in anymore. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But if you put yourself in their shoes, why would they not take it? Why would you not take the opportunity to be a head coach?
Yeah.
And make some life-changing money for 3 years. I mean, whether you're a success or not, you're going to make a bunch of money. And guess what? You'll probably get recycled back to being a coordinator again.
That's what I mean. Once you're in that NFL circle, I feel like you just, as bad as this sounds, you kind of just get passed around to everyone.
You're not wrong. That's exactly what it is. And yet again, another nice little segue here. I'm going to skip down to number 8. Former Notre Dame offensive coordinator Tommy Rees is set to make his NFL debut by being hired by the Browns as their next tight ends coach. So what do you think of this move now that Tommy Rees wants to get in on that circle? Jesse Stiers, that's what it's all about. Wants to get on the carousel.
Yeah, I think this is a great move for Tommy Rees. And I think ever since he became the OC at Notre Dame, this is kind of the trajectory I saw him in, right? And everyone was like, oh, why would you, go to Alabama just to be an OC? It was to get that foot in the door into the NFL, because so many of Nick Saban offensive coordinators, when you're done there or your time is up at Alabama, you can essentially go wherever you want. Do you want to become a head coach in college? Do you want to become a coordinator in the NFL? And I think that Tommy Rees very strategically set his next move up, and now he's finally gotten his foot into the door of his ultimate goal. I think he wants to be an offensive coordinator in the NFL. And how do you do that? Well, you start with being an effective tight ends coach, right? And I think it'll only be a matter of time before we see Tommy Rees in this cycle as an NFL offensive coordinator. And we're going to see Tommy Rees's name within the NFL for a good while now. Because like we just said, once you've proven yourself and you get that opportunity, even if you fail after 3 or 4 years, you're just going to get passed to the next team and the next team and the next team and the next team. And I think eventually we'll see Tommy Rees become a head coach in this league. I think he's got enough of a brilliant offensive mind that he will have his success and he will get his opportunity as a head coach in the NFL. I don't know if that's going to be in 5 years or in 10 years, but I think he's going to ultimately become a head coach at some point.
Yeah, 100%. And jumping in, like I said, he's getting on the carousel. And so now he's going to start getting passed around for all these different things. Look, he is doing the smartest thing possible. We've all thought that he wanted to be in the NFL. This is where he is now. I think he's going to be very, very happy there. And he's going to make a lot of money being in the NFL. So
and I think it's really fun too, Vince, because he's just following me around. Like, I was a Notre Dame fan before he was at Notre Dame. I lived in Cleveland before he was in Cleveland.
Hey,
So I might have to go catch a few games now, especially if he gets promoted to offensive coordinator at some point for the Browns. I just think that's cool. Like, I would love to go see how this offense, next season, not so much, right? He'll have influence because he is an offensive or used to be an offensive coordinator. I'm sure he'll be involved in game planning and etc. But if he becomes the actual OC for the Browns, that's just more fun for me. I would be more inclined to go see some Browns games if that means getting to watch a Tommy Rees-led offense out there on Sundays.
Fun fact, Tommy Rees is 1 year older than Notre Dame's backup kicker. Just throwing it out there.
Put that into perspective.
Just throwing it out there.
Maybe Tommy will hire me as like an offensive
I think
analyst.
you should give him a call. Welcome to town.
Yeah,
offer to take him out for a beer.
You want to know some nice spots?
Just saying.
I can analyze some film for you, look for some tendencies.
Let me get you his number.
You let me know.
Let me get you his number. I have you reach out, be like, hey, Tommy, welcome to town. Just want to take you out to a couple different spots, a couple watering holes, and just kind of treat you. Buy him a beverage. Just buy him a beverage. Welcome him to town.
Heard you have a significant other. Here's some nice spots if you'd like to, have a nice romantic evening.
That's all I gotta do.
A double date? Yeah, sounds great.
I mean, do it. I believe he's single and ready to mingle. I'm pretty sure. So you can, there you go, man. His destiny is in your hands. Okay,
I think so.
It's in your hands. All right, let's we'll go back up to the next one. There's a report that former LSU wide receiver Kayshon Boutte bet on LSU games while playing. So with all the legal gambling going on, do you buy or sell players betting on their teams to win? So while they're being active, betting on their teams to win, which obviously this whole Kayshon Boutte thing is bigger than this. It just led to the question of how do you feel about players betting on their own team to win? His whole thing is a much bigger deal than that. Like I think there's a warrant out for his arrest. Like he's gone down a bad rabbit hole. But what do you think about players betting on their own teams to win, not to lose, like point shaving, but to win?
Yeah, so when we're talking just straight up win or loss, and if you are betting on yourself to win, I honestly don't have any inkling I don't have any bad thoughts about that.
Exactly.
Because you yourself are contributing to that win. If you're saying spread or losing or unders, that is something you have very, very good control over. You can drop a pass, you can run the wrong route, you can do so many things to affect the spread, the under. But when we're talking about just winning, you are betting on yourself, you are betting on your teammates, your performance to go out there and win. So I personally don't have anything going on, or in terms of winning. But when we're talking about maybe taking the under on receiving yards or
right,
the spread, that's when I have some issues. But I mean, this Kayshon guy, Vince, I was going through the warrant.
He's in
this
trouble.
Man has reportedly placed just south of 9,000 wagers, totaling several hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And then I started looking at the numbers. He roughly deposited $132,000 into his account. He reportedly won $556,000, so nearly winning about $450,000, but he only withdrew $50,000 of that money. So it sounds like he was cycling his bets back into it and losing, but he still won $50,000 at the end of the day and placed over 9,000 bets. And I thought the most funny part was his account names were just his name. There was no trying to hide who he was or what he was doing. And that's the crazy part to me is, why not use a burner account on your buddy's phone or, some stupid Alabama player's name instead of your own name at LSU? I just think it's so crazy that these guys think that they can make 9,000 bets and have a username that is literally their name and it's never going to come back to them. That's the crazy part to me.
It's hilarious. I mean, it's hilarious. That's the bottom line. It's hilarious. And, because they think they're above the law and all that stuff. And that, okay, fine. That's whatever. But when it comes to this particular question, I have no problem with kids betting on themselves and betting on their team in a positive way. Like, hey, we're going to go out and win, and I'm going to bet on us to win. What's wrong? I don't understand. I honestly don't understand what's wrong with that. Now, it's a slippery slope. You can get yourself in trouble. And I get that. I get that part of it. But like in a perfect world, you should be allowed to bet on yourself to win. That's how I feel. But then you get into point shaving and stat shaving and all of these other different things that can get you into a hell of a lot of trouble, which clearly it has for this guy. So, and Sloppy Joe saying he was underage. So there you go. That's obviously also a bit of an issue there. So thank goodness legalized gambling didn't come out until after I was over 21, at least on my phone. That's a good thing, frankly. So I never had that temptation. So, and obviously never played at a high enough level that anybody cared to bet with me on anything. So have you ever been tempted to bet on youth sports, Jesse?
No. I'd say the farthest I ventured out was like tennis.
Nice.
I mainly stick to college football, NFL, NBA, and the Cubs. I stick to the Cubs a lot. The Cubs is. I was explaining this to a friend. The baseball season is so long that if you are if you are a dedicated fan, and I'm not saying I'm like 100% the best fan in the world, but I watched a lot of those games last year. And so even to the point where I bought the MLB pass so I could watch them every game, right? And so what I'm getting at here is when you watch them for 80 games, you can build up a good tendency of, you can kind of expect things to happen.
Sure.
And I found that that's when I'm the most successful at it because I can not predict, but I'm giving myself a better chance.
Sure.
Because I've saturated myself with so many of their games and when you have the rotation set up like these guys, you know what to expect against certain lineups and things like that. So that's where I've had the most success is the team that I invest the most time in, essentially.
And you've had some success, Jesse Stiers. You're not afraid to ring the bell, so I'm impressed by that.
Hey, I hit a nice $600 bet on the NFL this last weekend.
Look at you. See, I've gotten gun shy, man. I've lost so much lately that I'm just so gun shy. But I only really bet on baseball. Like basketball, was way too nerve-wracking for me because it always came down to like free throws at the end. Like it always seemed, and I'm like living and dying on these kids shooting free throws. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. So football was my thing for a long time. And Notre Dame, frankly, let me down a bunch this year.
Notre Dame screwed me a lot this season.
Notre Dame was always my lock. Because it's just what you said. Us being locked into what Notre Dame is doing on a day-to-day basis and all that stuff. Like Notre Dame was my lock to make money. A lot of times it was like over-unders. It was spreads. It was, money lines, that kind of stuff. They screwed me 2 ways from Sunday all the time. And so it's like, you know what? I think I'm just going to take a break for a while before I have literally zero.
I use an app and it tracks all of your sports betting for you. So it gives you your all-time record, your all-time wins and losses. It's pretty nice. It's got everything all synced up to it, right? And I don't know if you're a Spotify guy or Apple Music guy or, a lot of these services will give you what's called like your year recap, right? And like, your most listened to song of the year or like your photo album will create like a video montage of all of your pictures for the year, right? And so this app called Pick It, they gave me a year recap. And one of the slides was so close yet so far. And it told me how many bets I lost off of a parlay and only one leg losing, right? I had like 400 parlays that lost by one leg. And then they took it a step further and said, this is how much money you would have won had those parlays hit. $75,000, Vince, that I missed out on because of one leg not hitting on all of these different parlays. I know. It's like that's the last thing I want to hear.
Oh, that's the last
thing. And you're telling me you want me to come back for more tomorrow?
Right. And you do.
I do.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Boy, that is one of the most depressing things I've ever heard. Holy cow. Because that's what's frustrating. Because I do enjoy building those legs, those parlays, so that you have bigger odds, right? Of course, the bigger the odds, the more of a chance you have of losing. And more often than not, I lose. And so, yeah, that's always the fun part is the parlays and all that. And I always end up losing by like one leg. And it's so depressing. So depressing.
Stymie, I have thought about the round robin technique. You're not wrong. But the thing about round robin is what round robin does, Vince, is if you take like 5 bets that you like, it parlays it as many times as possible. So it'd create like as many 2-leg parlays as possible. So even if your one leg doesn't hit, you still have all these other
chance. Okay.
Right. But the thing is it's instead of putting $50 on one bet, you're putting $10 on
spread it out
5 different bets. And so to me, I'm a big like bang for buck kind of guy.
Yeah,
I like the big 700+ odds and not just the mini, plus 100 odds that you might get to. I'm big boom for bust kind of guy. And so
me too.
Yeah,
I
can't help myself.
All right, we got a few more questions to get to before we shuffle off into shuffle off to Buffalo. All right, they're out now. We can't shuffle off there. All right, multiple choice. This is a new one for rapid fire. Multiple choice. So the junior day pictures at Notre Dame are surfacing with the recruits. They're getting sent out by Notre Dame to the recruits. The recruits are now publishing them, on social media. So, which uniform pairing do you like the best that were shown during these junior day pictures? A, the white on white, the icy whites. B, the green jerseys with the white pants. Or C, just the traditional old school Notre Dame look.
All right, so I'm kicking out traditional.
Okay.
We know that's got to go. It's been here for years. That's not any fun.
It's great. I mean, I don't have a problem with it.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
But we all need a little variety in life.
Yes.
Right?
Agreed. That would be
my so it comes down to white on white and green on white. I'm usually not a monochromatic guy unless it's white on white. There's something about the white pants, the white uniforms, the white spats, the white gloves, the white leggings, the white bicep bands, everything white. Give me everything. That's the only time I will go monochromatic. I think it looks clean, and I love at the end of the day, you see how hard you're working. You can see who's out there putting in that effort, right? And so it is a very close call, but I just love that green so much. And now if it was green on green, I would say no go. But since they got the white pants in there, I'm all in on it, right? Okay. And so I got to go 1A, green with white, 1B, white on white, and then like number 5, the traditionals.
Okay. I dig that. I would just reverse the white on white for me is just I just love that so much. That needs to be at least one road game a year. Yes. They bust those out. I mean, it just has to be. It just has to be. I mean, you can't tease us with those and then
never wear them again.
Can't do it. You can't do it. Now, I will also say I was not a huge fan of the green on green on green on green that they had for the green out. I would have much rather had the green on white. No doubt about it. And the green on white is just such a sexier look than with the green pants.
Yes. See, you agree.
Better. You agree. So much better. Yes, I do. I absolutely do.
Number 2, but green on white.
But the white on white far surpasses the green on green.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it's not even close. So not for me, 1A is white on white, 1B is green on white, and then you got your traditionals underneath that. Yeah. I still love the traditional Notre Dame look.
Or traditionals.
I don't want them to get out of there. I don't. I love the traditional navy on gold and in all of it. I do. But man, that white on white is just so good.
Vince, could you imagine? I just imagine this. White on white, some green accent. I'd want you couldn't beat it in my opinion.
Right. You take the ND logo, you make that green.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't want stripes. I don't want stripes on the pants. That does I am not a stripe on the pant guy at all. I like just the clean look from the pants. So I'm sorry. And it is not an imitation of Penn State. And you want to know why? Because Penn State doesn't have the best lid in college football.
That's correct.
What sets it all apart.
I think you can't go wrong when you have the best lid.
That's right.
In the whole game.
That's all I'm saying.
Anything can look good when you got that lid.
That's all I'm saying. So the white on white with the gold lid, sexy.
Vince might have to step away for a second.
No, give me a second. All right. Let's talk a little, just for fun, let's talk a little Baseball Hall of Fame. So 3 guys were elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame this past week, 2 of which are Joe Mauer and Todd Helton. Both of them were multi-sport athletes at a high level, with Mauer winning the National Gatorade Player of the Year in 2001 in football, and Todd Helton starting over Peyton Manning at quarterback while at Tennessee. So do you buy or sell that they made the right decision to go into pro baseball?
Yeah, I think that these guys solidified that they made the right decision by not only being a professional baseball player, but being in the top 1% by making it to the Baseball Hall of Fame, right? I think that the bigger question becomes, why do people still think they need to specialize? Not people. Why do young athletes
absolutely
think that they need to specialize or focus on these one sports when you got proven examples of Hall of Famers?
Right.
Not
playing at a high level in high school.
Right.
And college, for that matter.
And Mauer was a tremendous basketball player, too.
Averaged over 20 points a game.
And so I think that these kids need to realize that it's more impressive when you have the athleticism to be a dominant football player, a dominant baseball player, a dominant basketball player, because you know what that means when these guys, when these coaches come to recruit you, it just, your full athleticism is on display. You are not funneled down into this one specific thing that you can do. You are now versatile. You could maybe be a safety. You could maybe be an undersized linebacker. Depending on what it might be, when you are able to play these multiple sports, it just diversifies your portfolio as a young athlete that is trying to get into college athletics. And so when I was, I found this out, I loved it because, again, I think that it just shows that these guys it's like Patrick Mahomes, right? Like Patrick Mahomes was a great basketball player. He was a tremendous baseball pitcher. And I just think that's the path that these kids should be focused on is how can I be an athlete, right? How can I allow my athleticism to bleed into as many different sports as possible?
You were an athlete. Obviously, you played 2 sports in high school and college.
I probably should have wrestled. I think that's one of my bigger regrets.
Yeah, you probably should have. I think you could have been pretty good at that, actually.
You
did it in middle school, didn't you?
Yeah, and the thing was, middle school is a lot easier. You have 1 minute periods. When you get to high school, you got 2 minute periods. So the match is essentially doubling in itself. And, this person will never hear this, but the guy that was the wrestling coach was also my football coach. And I could only do so much amount of time with that said person. When football season was over, I didn't want to be sucked up in that.
That's fair. Believe me, I had to work for him. So that's a fair statement on your part. But like my son, as I've talked many times about on this show, is a 3-sport varsity athlete at the 3rd largest high school in Indiana. Is he elite? He's getting there. You know what I mean? But I cannot see a world where he's only doing one sport. Right? I don't see that being a thing. You should be doing stuff all the time. So he's got a chance of being a captain on the soccer team in the fall. Obviously, going to go in college and be a kicker for the football team. And he's been to state in track. Just ran 21 miles an hour today at speed training. Why would you not do as absolute much as you possibly can do so that you're busy and because I can tell you this also from being a coach, these college coaches ask about your stats in other sports. They want to know how your athleticism translates from one sport to the next.
Listen, there's a reason why Lane Kiffin and Marcus, did you see this? Marcus Freeman and Lane Kiffin were in the same gym watching Deuce Knight play basketball the other night.
Right.
There's a reason why.
Right.
There's a reason why.
Absolutely. Yep. No doubt about it. So being a multi-sport athlete, especially in high school, is absolutely critical. Don't pigeonhole yourself. Don't be that guy. Unless you're just have no talent.
But I guess it's one thing if you don't have the talent, but like if you have the talent, and that's the thing is if you have the talent to do all these things, it is more impressive to be a multi-sport athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. So, and I would get bored as a parent of a one-sport athlete. I'll be honest with you.
Unless you live in like California or Florida where you can practice that same sport year-round.
Absolutely.
It makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, what are you doing in the wintertime when you can't go outside and throw the football or hit the tackling sled or you know, whatever? Yeah, are you just lifting and running sprints all day inside?
Right.
I think, like you said, you would just get so bored.
I look forward to when one season ends and the next one comes.
I know.
I look forward to it. And fall is my favorite time of year because I got soccer games to go to, I got football games to go to, I got Notre Dame to cover, all these different things. And then when all that's over, it comes to a screeching halt. It's like, okay, well, time to get ready for track season, that kind of stuff. So I don't know what I'm going to do when my kid's no longer doing sports, at least, at the high school level. I'm going to be searching for stuff to do. It's going to be rough.
Good thing you got a bunch of kids coming up through.
Yeah, they're going to be doing something, but it probably won't be sports at a high level.
Now, does this to me, this makes me more excited for Drake Bowen, honestly, because
and I'm curious about Drake Bowen because he's looking to be in the starting middle linebacker at Notre Dame. So what does that mean?
He also looks to be the central figure amongst the baseball team.
Yeah, right. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting because football is his number one. It has to be because he's a scholarship athlete for football. So what does that look like with baseball?
Well, Vince, I'll be honest with you too. It's even especially harder right now because you're learning the system of both of these, of both the Notre Dame football, Al Golden's defense and, whatever the baseball team is requiring them as well. And that's the hardest part is because if you start missing this time as a football player, it is a very central development phase for younger players of understanding the playbook, understanding alignment, the smaller things that you don't really think about as you're kind of losing time going off and playing baseball. And I'm not saying that this is a bad thing or a negative thing. Sure. I just think it's something to think about, right? Like you lose some of that developmental time when you're off doing the other. And, I know Jeff Samardzija was able to do it, but Jeff Samardzija had it right. He was only needed every fifth day, every fourth day, right? Right. And so it was a little bit easier for him to bounce around and, hey, I got to go throw a bullpen today. Okay, well, and for pitchers, when they're not pitching, it's a lot of cardio. Well, what do you think football practice is as a wide receiver?
Exactly.
A ton of cardio, right?
It worked out really, really well.
Right. It's not going to be as smooth for Drake Bowen. So I'm interested to see how that goes. But I guess what I'm getting at is him being a multi-sport athlete is what heightens my expectations for him because I think he's going to be a stud in both sports.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see that as well because if you remember, Jeff Samardzija could have been a major league center fielder if he played baseball full time and didn't play football. But he couldn't do both. He couldn't be a field player in baseball and a wide receiver for the football team. That just wasn't a possibility. It just wasn't going to work, right? And so he had to be a pitcher. He had to be a pitcher who ended up getting drafted and having a hell of a major league baseball career, obviously. But he was an athlete in center field, man, when he was in high school. I mean, he was a stud and could have easily been a center fielder in the Big East. Easily.
Reminds me, too, of Pat Connaughton, a guy that got drafted as an MLB pitcher, told the Baltimore Orioles, hey, I don't want to pitch yet. I want to come back for my senior season of basketball. Then what happens? He goes on to be drafted, and now he's, a bench. It comes off the bench for the Milwaukee Bucks just about every night and has won an NBA championship. So I just think it's awesome. When and hopefully I'm fortunate to have kids, that would be my ultimate goal is play as many sports as possible.
Absolutely. Don't hamstring them as much as you possibly can.
Especially anything that involves running. Because if you are an elite runner and you have that speed, that translates to every sport.
Not wrong.
Speed equals power and power equals force.
I agree. That's a nice equation. All right, a few more questions here. It is blank that Colorado has self-reported 11 violations to the NCAA.
I don't know where to go with this one because am I surprised that Colorado has 11 violations? No. Am I surprised that they've self-reported them? Honestly, yeah, I am a little bit surprised, right? But I guess what I want to know is, one, what is the severity of these violations?
They're all
right?
minor. They're all minor, and they're all ridiculous. They're like taking a picture with a recruit when it was non-contact time, having guys on campus at a camp who were potentially going to be in the transfer portal but weren't yet. Stuff like that. Like,
so to me, I think the best
stuff.
word to describe it would be very procedural.
Yes, agreed.
Because I think Deion doesn't want to end up. I mean, let's be honest. We saw what happened to Jim Harbaugh, right?
Yeah.
As many as I think that the coaching world might be on edge because Jim Harbaugh was potentially, and again, I don't know Jim Harbaugh's intentions, but there is potential that he was just doing stuff not knowing that he was violating, right? And so if you can get ahead of it and not have to sit out, because what's a bigger headline? Deion Sanders reports 11 violations, or Deion Sanders is suspended for 2 games because of 11 violations, right?
Sure.
And so if you can get ahead of it, yeah, it's a headline now, but it's an even bigger headline down the road if you get suspended and you got to sit out games, right? And then everyone's coming down on Deion Sanders about this and that, and oh, I told you so, and blah, blah, blah. So I think it's very procedural of Colorado to self-report these.
Yeah, and like I said, it was dumb stuff, and a couple of the other ones were like, posting certain videos of certain things at inopportune times, and then they were taken down because they found out that they were bad or against the rules or whatever. I mean, so they were all stupid little things, but of course it's a headline because it's Colorado, and it's always going to be a headline because it's Colorado. There was a graphic that I just saw on Twitter where somebody put out college football defensive tiers. Tier 4 under much improved. They've got Colorado, USC, and LSU. You want to talk about clickbait, ladies and gentlemen? There you have it in a nutshell. Okay. So I thought that was very interesting. By the way, Notre Dame was in tier 2, which is solid, quote unquote, which is interesting. But anyway,
how many teams were in each tier, Vince?
Let's see here. They had 3 teams in tier 1: Ohio State, Iowa, and Georgia. It was dominant. Tier 2 is Tier 2 is stout. It has Texas, Michigan, Clemson, Penn State. Let's see here. Oregon, Utah, Notre Dame, and Florida State.
Okay.
Tier 3 is solid. That's Nebraska, Missouri, Ole Miss, Miami, Virginia Tech, Wisconsin, Texas A&M, and Alabama.
Okay. So it sounds like they kind of just went through the top 25 and were like, let's pull these teams out defensively, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But
absolutely.
I mean, I would say I would feel comfortable saying that Georgia and Michigan have better defenses than Notre Dame this past season. I'd probably draw the line at Ohio State.
Yeah.
I think Ohio State was improved, but I'm more impressed with what Notre Dame's secondary did compared to Ohio State's. And I mean, let's be honest, Michigan's offense, while Michigan won a national championship, it wasn't because of this high-powered offense that they had.
No.
It was because they had a great defense and they controlled the ball and didn't turn the ball over on offense, right? And so I guess what I'm getting at is I don't think Big Ten offenses are as potent as what they might get hyped up to be.
Yeah.
And so I respect Notre Dame's body of work defensively more than I respect Ohio State's body of work.
Agreed. All right. Let's see here. Fair or foul that Luka Doncic had a Suns fan removed from the game for yelling at him that he was slow and needed to get on a treadmill. Apparently that gets you tossed.
It's funny, Vince. I watched this game live last night.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did. And I just thought it was hilarious. And I think it's funny. I think it's it's one of those insecurities that you see some of these white foreign players have, like Doncic, Jokic. I think they get criticized a lot for their natural kind of lack of speed, right? They're more kind of finesse players rather than, like I said, a speed or agility type player. But it's incredibly soft. Like, I get it when and I think what ultimately is the biggest disgrace to me is, one, you got to be tougher than that, right? Like, I guarantee that he's been yelled much worse things, right? I think the bigger issue is they blew a 20-point lead and ended up losing by like 20 or 30 points, right?
Ouch.
And so that's the main issue of what was going on. And again, it takes away from situations when fans actually need to be removed from games, when they're saying inappropriate things about, maybe a player's family or just whatever it might be. I think you have to reserve getting a fan ejected for situations like that, not just him saying, oh, you suck, or hey, you're slow, or, those sort of things. And so I think that Luka Doncic is ultimately doing a disservice to the NBA by being incredibly soft in this situation.
Yep, incredibly soft. It's totally foul. Like, come on, dude. Really? Are you upset he told you to get on a treadmill? Like, I would look at the guy and be like, come up with something better. I would actually challenge him to insult me more.
That's all you got?
Yeah. That was pathetic. That's a pathetic thing to even get in trouble for. I was very disappointed.
Listen, Vince. My favorite time in high school, outside of playing under the Friday Night Lights, is when the season ended. A ton of my teammates were on the basketball team.
Okay.
And when I was in high school, we made it a point of trying to have the best student section in the city. And
for basketball. And
basketball.
And it was.
And we thought that the team fed off of it. We would bring the energy. It was just a ton of fun, right?
Because also by the PA announcer.
Yes. I forgot about that. And so, when you couldn't attend the Friday night games that all the other friends went to, the basketball games was like our fun thing to do as the football players, right? And I'm just telling you now, Vince, the amount of crude things that I said to high school basketball players was much worse than this fan yelling at Luka Doncic to get on the treadmill. That's all I'm going to say. I will not further indict myself any further, but
you're not wrong.
I said way worse things than telling a guy that he needs to get on the treadmill.
I'm sure you did. And you guys did a good job of doing your research too on some of those guys. Just going to put it out there. You guys were across the court from me. I knew what was going on. I knew what was going on. Don't worry. Those are for good times. Those are good times for sure. All right, last one. NFL Conference Championships of this weekend. We got Chiefs, Ravens in the AFC. We got Lions, 49ers in the NFC. Is there a game that you're looking more forward to between the two? And then who wins?
Yeah, I think both of these are tremendous matchups, to be quite honest with you, for different reasons. The Chiefs and the Ravens, you got, Patrick Mahomes, guys just on a burner of MVPs, Super Bowls, whatever it might be. Then you got Lamar, who is probably going to win his second MVP this year.
Right.
His biggest knock is the playoffs. Hasn't won the big one, hasn't gone the whole way. I think the Chiefs' offense is not as good as it usually is.
Sure.
I think they're relying more on their defense, which is kind of surprising. And then you look at the Ravens, and I think that Lamar is tremendous on offense. He's able to make plays when nothing is there. But to me, the Ravens, their defense is so good. I think that they might be the best defense in the league. And so I'm interested to see, how these two teams match up of one of the better offenses against one of the better defenses. And then you kind of flip it. The Ravens offense is still good and the Chiefs defense is still good. So I think it's a very equally matched game. And then you flip over the 49ers and the Lions. I love the Lions because of what they've done. I love Dan Campbell. I love the culture that he's created. I love that they're on this run. And I don't know if I really wouldn't call it a Cinderella story. And I don't think it's a David versus Goliath type situation. I think if the Lions can show up and play how they're supposed to, this can be a very close game. And I want to see some teams in the Super Bowl that we haven't gotten the chance to see in a while. So if it was a Lions and Ravens Super Bowl,
Yeah.
I think that'd be great, right? So overall, I think I'm more so rooting for, or sorry, I have more interest in the Ravens and Chiefs just because I like those are just, it feels like two just juggernauts going head to head, right? And in the 49ers and Lions, while it's still a great game, I just don't know if the Lions are there yet fully because I think they have a lot of holes on their defense, and Kyle Shanahan is a brilliant offensive guy, and so I don't know if they'll be able to last. I know I'm getting long-winded, but there's just something telling me that Mahomes he just wins, and so I got to go with the Chiefs on the one side, and I'm going to go with the Lions on the other. I think you're going to get a rematch of Week 1 in the NFL, Chiefs and Lions in the Super Bowl.
All right, so everything you said, spot on. I think you're going to see better football played in Kansas City and Baltimore. I think it's going to be a better actual football game, okay? But I think the Lions 49ers game is going to be more exciting. Does that make sense? Like that's how I feel about this weekend. And look, Mahomes never goes on the road in the playoffs. And he somehow managed to find a way to win this last week. I don't know if he can do it 2 weeks in a row. So I'm saying Ravens win that game. And I would be excommunicated from my family if I wasn't rooting for the Lions. So I will continue to root for the Lions. Man. And I'm hoping Ravens Lions. I think that could be a fun Super Bowl. A lot of fun. So that's what I'm going with.
You know what the key factor in that 49ers and Lions game is Deebo Samuel.
Yes.
Deebo Samuel does not play. The Lions' chances jump significantly because that offense is revolved around Deebo Samuel creating space. Even when he's not catching the ball, he's creating space for Kittle, Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, etc. And so if he's out, I think the focal point of that offense becomes Christian McCaffrey. And if I'm the Lions, if we can shut down Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel is out, and you got to make Brock Purdy really make quarterback throws, not system throws, but quarterback throws, you stand a good chance.
Yeah, I love it. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of IB Nation Sports Talk. Make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, give us a 5-star review, all those fun and exciting things that y'all do when y'all do it. Really appreciate it. We'll be back Monday. And, of course, we'll be talking about the championship games that we just discussed and anything going on Notre Dame-wise, which there always seems to be some sort of news and notes. And so I'm sure we're going to come with something at that point. So
you'll just have to tune in and figure out what.
Yeah, we're just going to have to figure it out. So hopefully my voice will be able to heal up over the next few days. Fingers crossed. All right. So, but in the meantime, everybody have a wonderful rest of your weekend. So
tune in to Notre Dame and Syracuse.
That's right. I'm going to flip it over. I've got it up right here. Notre Dame currently down by 2. And this is the first ranked opponent that's come to Purcell Pavilion in quite a while, too. So Notre Dame's on a little bit of a drought. 0 field goals the last 2.5 minutes. So go ahead and check it out. Turn down your volume. Turn up Sean Stiers. You won't regret it. I promise you. So for Jesse, I'm Vince. We'll talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.